Hello, friends. Welcome back to Trending. Today is Thursday, September 5th, about 9:30 as we're recording this morning. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. How's it going?
Good. You did a great job holding down the fort last week on your solo Joe episode, so thank you for knocking that out.
No problem.
This is probably TMI for people, but I woke up with some weird eye thing last week. Or my eye was like swollen shut and just gross, and I was supposed to be like on camera like 4 times last Thursday, and I was like canceling them all because you would not be able to focus on anything except for my gross eye last week.
There's a deep bench at Ridgepoint Church.
There's plenty of people who can handle those things.
Yeah.
So thanks for taking over for me when I was
I'm glad you're feeling
unavailable. Better. Yeah, I'm doing just fine now. So, okay. So as always, lots in the news today. I've got one topic that I thought it's a topic by itself, but it also we can wrap in some other things as we're talking about it. So earlier this week, I found an interesting article that the Surgeon General just released a new statement. He is worried about parents under pressure. So he put together this big, full-out document that he sent out to, I guess, wherever he sends out his press releases and things. And so the headline is that the parents are basically just too stressed right now. The headline was, "Parents are not okay, and here's what we can do about it."
Okay.
So Vivek Murthy, he's our Surgeon General. During his time in leadership, he's done quite a few kind of groundbreaking, interesting things. He's the one who first kind of put out that we're in the epidemic of loneliness right now, and he's talking about a lot of mental health things. And I don't know about you, but whenever I think of the Surgeon General, all I think of is the thing that's on the cigarettes and the gas station things, warning us about all the things that are bad for us. But he's kind of taking it to the next level about some of the things behind the things that are causing a lot of these issues. Yeah. So he's saying that parents right now are just under more stress than they've ever been under before. In his report that he put out, he says that he only puts out these advisories when, let me get the wording right here. So these kind of advisories are reserved for significant public health challenges that require the nation's immediate awareness and action.
Wow.
So to him, the current state of parents and the stress they're feeling is that big of a deal. It needs to be addressed. So he's got some recommendations for policy for employers. He's also just kind of hoping that he can kind of impact culture slowly. And then there's some things that parents can do. So a couple quick questions to toss your way, Joe.
Okay.
So he's kind of making the claim that parents right now have more stress than parents have maybe ever before. He thinks it's kind of at an all-time high. He quotes things like social media usage, which our parents didn't have to deal with, both for themselves and their kids. Current parents are having to wrestle with that. School violence continues to be a thing. There's another school shooting in Georgia yesterday, 4 people dead. And look, man, I've thought about that. It does kind of seem like it's only a matter of time until it's going to hit close to home. And so that is on my mind as a parent, and especially weeks like this, which obviously just very heartbreaking. Yeah. That wasn't necessarily a thing a generation or 2 ago. Parents didn't have to worry about that. There's wars going on around the world. The economy is not doing so hot. I think we've talked before about how I remember when I was growing up, it seemed like most of my friends were a single income home. Like usually the dads worked and the moms stayed at home. My friends, all of us are working. Everybody's working, and we're having trouble keeping up economically. So it does kind of seem like things are piling up in this specific time. And I also, personally, if I'm being really honest, sometimes I get a little annoyed when people say, "Oh, culture is the worst now that it's ever been," and they kind of throw the current stuff in the dumpster, like, "Oh, this is the worst," and America's just going downhill. So there's that. Right. But also, I think there's some truth. There's a lot of things happening right now that haven't happened before. So you're a little bit older than me. So what's your take? Do you, as you kind of hear some of the reports and just your experience as a parent, do you think things really are worse now than they have been before? Are you feeling that as a dad, or maybe not? Is it not quite as bad as some of the hype is making it out to be?
Sure. No, I think the thing behind the thing is, and when we parent, like we do experience brand new things for the first time. Mm-hmm. We don't have hardly any experience that we can even loan or lend from other tangent experiences. So this is truly new. Yeah. We assume that we're not doing as good as we should be. Yeah. And there's like this feedback loop of, yes, the world is terrible and somehow we're contributing to it, right? Or we're not doing enough to push it back in the right direction. So I think there could be some self-condemnation and guilt along the way. I do think that the average adult who is married and or a parent, I think they're lonelier than ever. They feel like they're isolated, so they feel like they don't have great support. Yeah. So when you're doing something new and you feel like you're on your own, and at best you're kind of doing net neutral and not net positive or advancement.
Yeah.
I just think it's like you feel like the walls do begin to cave in, and it's hard, I think, to dig out of that because our disposition and our posture, doesn't exude this great confidence.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of things that we can do and say from here, particularly as people of faith, because one of the agendas of the Christian life is to be transformed, to have this neat balance of accepting that we have fallen short, but also having the courage to emerge into something better. I think that is something in a balanced Christian teaching that we should have a steady diet of.
Yeah.
And so, I do think the church can tend to these needs. And I think we have a wonderful opportunity if we would choose to engage with it for the current moment and for the future. I was even thinking about it like recently. I was reminded of a church that was in the denomination of churches I was a part of in Memphis, Tennessee, Hope Church in Memphis. They're like one of the first ones ever to have a kids ministry focused on kids with neurodivergent issues.
Okay.
And I have a friend who's got 2 of his 3 kids have a neurodivergent situation. And they have simply picked the only church in our city that seems to be making any attempt.
Yeah.
Now, there are some Sundays it does not go well because they could obviously do more.
Yeah.
So I just admire this church back in Memphis who has said, hey, 1 out of 4 households may be dealing with this. There's no churches meeting their needs or even bringing these people together in community.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be courageous enough to try it. We're going to go learn new ways to outfit our spaces, to have better training for our volunteers and teachers, employ people on our staff who are aware of these things so that we can give these people a hand.
Yep.
All that to say, I think people are looking for a hand. They're looking for somebody to help them.
Yeah.
And when the church is simply too busy with other initiatives, I think we miss a great opportunity to help some of these folks who are weighed down with so many things out there. Yeah. And so I hope that, like in all occasions, in all places in the world, for every generation, that the church can be good news. Because I think people are looking for good news.
Yep.
And I think there's some ways that we could do that in a time like ours. So,
yeah, that's great. Before we started recording, we were just chatting that last night we kicked off our Wednesday night stuff here.
Yeah.
And we had, 5 or 6 different classes going last night for adults, and they were all full.
Yeah.
Lots of people were here. We had family dinner hour, and the activity center was full of people eating sloppy joes.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. When the church is at its best, that's one of the best places to find meaningful community, right? I think, and that's one of the things that Vivek Murthy was saying is if you're feeling stressed and lonely and anxious, community is one of the best things that you can do is try to make it a priority to spend time with other people that you care about.
Yeah.
Church is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
One question I have, I think we've talked about this before, but just a reminder for people, there's a lot of verses in the Bible that say things like, "Come unto me, all you who are weary, and I'll give you rest," or my burden is easy, my yoke is light, and those kinds of verses, which we know are true. But I guess if people are feeling the stress that this document's talking about, I guess practically, what does that look like? What does it mean to come to Jesus, all who are weary? Practically speaking, if we're feeling that, we know those verses, but how can we actually use our faith to help us get out of that season?
Yeah. I think we have to give ourselves to the risk of community. Rich Villottas said that we can't avoid it. We are healed in community and we are hurt in community. We're never healed in isolation. Yeah. And unfortunately, we're never hurt in isolation. And so attempting to love somebody else and have them love you back is a huge risk. If we could be risk averse in this life if we just choose to live in isolation. But there's a whole host of problems, as our Surgeon General has talked about, in the epidemic of loneliness. And so I think we need to get into community, but we also need to say to ourselves, I can't show up and be my best self for somebody else unless I kind of deal with some stuff within. Yeah. I was just listening to a podcast from a therapist who talked about attachment theory, which we were just in a golden era of soul work and soul care. Yeah. I mean, there are so many great things out there, both inside the church and outside the church. Kurt Thompson, Inside the Church, where he talks about the anatomy of the soul, the anatomy of shame, which are things dealing with how do we know who we are as a person and how are we effective and not effective in community. I mean, people are touching on these things. But the attachment theory stuff has been fascinating to me because they've kind of boiled it down to 4 attachment theory types.
Okay.
And only one of the 4 is a good attachment. So
Okay.
their hypothesis is that by the age of 2, we have developed a sense of confidence, a sense of self that either helps us when attaching to others or prevents us from attaching well to others in community. I mean, can you imagine that? Like, so 2 years, like,
Wow.
so our parents had a lot on their shoulders to help create an environment for us to be able to attach to people. So like 3, just with the math, 3 out of 4 of us don't do well in community.
Yeah.
And therefore, if we're going to find community, a community that lasts, a community that's self-giving, a community that also helps us and helps put us back together, we have to probably open ourselves up to examination.
Yeah.
What are some patterns that I'm seeing that are not so helpful in relationship with others, and can I begin to address those so that I can have that nurturing community I think that we're all craving that could also help fix the world around us too, give us a sense of purpose and whatnot. So I think it's we need to get into community, but we also probably need to engage in a very long journey of self-awareness and then self-care. And try to approach some sort of a way of repair and therapy so that we can be a little more effective in our relationships. I think it happens in our spousal relationship, relationship to our kids, and the relationship to others that we're trying to do this thing called community with.
Yeah.
So a lot of work ahead, but it's vital, and I think it'll be helpful to give each of us, not just me personally, but also those who spend a lot of time with me, around me, a sense of things are actually getting better because I feel like I am surrounded, I am connected, I'm using my gifts, and I can start counting on people without worrying that they're going to fail me. Like all that takes a lot of work to have, good sense of all that. But I think that we could do that with the help of our God, but also with the help of the people of God around us.
Yeah, that's really good. This is really good timing. We're starting a new sermon series this week. Yeah, this week.
Yeah.
Rhythms, where we're talking about work and life and play and balance and what to do when we're stressed. That's what we're going to talk about this week. So that's good timing. Yeah. So I guess one thing that the article and the presentation from the Surgeon General was talking about, again, the social media leads to comparison, and so I think a lot of us feel like we have to have our kids involved in 3 or 4 extracurriculars. We need to have these extraordinary birthday parties. We need to make sure they're straight A students. I think social media has only added that pressure for parents feel. So I guess, I don't know if we can kind of start to wrap up here.
Yeah.
Other than community, if people are feeling that social media pressure, maybe just the stress of being extra busy, or what else can we do to kind of chip away at just the stress that most parents are feeling right now?
I think we need to create a boundary, and this is something that Nasser talked about last night, which I'm still thinking about. In Genesis, God creates and he also eliminates. So he creates in chapters 1, 2, and 3, and then he eliminates through the flood in Genesis 6 and 8. And something that Marty Solomon and the Bema folks talk about is God is other than us. Like the reason he's holy and infinitely superior, because he knows when to stop creating. He knows when to stop eliminating. Where humans, we just kind of go headlong into those things. And Nasser made this cool point. He's like, in Genesis 1, so there's 2 creation stories in Genesis. The first one, it doesn't start from nothing. In the Hebrew, it's like it actually starts with like chaos. There's like a kind of darkness, waters, murkiness. But the Hebrew word there is tohu vabohu. It's like so like this
bless
chaos. You. Yeah, bless you. Yeah, but it's like a chaos. And what's neat about the creation story of Genesis 1 is it goes from chaos to order. Okay, God separates 2 spaces. There's sea and there's sky, and then he separates the sea and land. So he's got these spaces that he separates and then he fills them. So Nasser made this great point. Like, what if God kept on separating and filling, it would actually go from chaos to order back to chaos again, because there's like this never ending separating and filling stuff, and like all of a sudden like the order begins to give way. Yeah. And so when it comes to like things that we want to create and things that we want to eliminate, we got to have a boundary, or else things begin to resemble chaos in our lives, and it's not the order I think that we all crave. And so, something that Brent said last week, which I think was important, is like that idea of enough, or the enough strategy that he talked about. It's something that we kind of decide from within, because what might be enough for Matt may not be the same for me. Right. And so I've got to have the courage to watch and observe what you're doing as you're creating your own boundaries and spaces.
Yeah.
And I need to say, I admire what Matt's doing. I also need to take into account what that means for me and for my family and stuff like that. So finding a boundary and sticking to it for the long haul is something that creates, it takes great discipline. And if we stick to it, I think that we have a better life than we can ever imagine.
Yeah, I think that's good. And again, this is the kind of thing where there's just no hacks really, right? Like
This is hard work.
It's hard work. It's setting boundaries. It's making time for community. It's making time for rest.
Yeah.
All this stuff that doesn't come easy to modern Americans, but we need to get better at it because there's an epidemic.
Yeah.
According to the number one doctor in our country, this is a big issue that we need to be aware of.
And something I think that a Jesus spirituality will give us is as we develop, it'll prevent it. Because if everyone's affected by it, what this thing can turn into is judgmentalism. Like if we start to do better than our neighbor, you can say, look how good we're doing. Or on the other side, if we're failing at it, it can turn into self-condemnation. It's like, man, the Smiths are doing way better than us. What's our problem, right? So I think another way that Jesus can help us in this moment is like when something it seems like affecting everybody, we have a spirituality of saying that we should not compare ourselves to somebody else and judge them, nor should we compare ourselves to somebody else and condemn ourselves. But we can find grace and rest as we work on the thing with all the discipline and hard work that we can, try to muster.
Totally. And in the report from Dr. Murthy, he made a good point too, that these kind of struggles negatively affect everyone. When everyone's tired and everyone's stressed, our country's productivity goes down and our healthcare costs go up.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. So if all of us collectively do better at this, ourselves will be healthier and our country will be healthier. Our productivity and our healthcare costs, our productivity will go up, healthcare costs will go down, and we'll all feel better. So we all win when we do this, right?
And I can even share anecdotally. So I've been doing some flying this year. I flew a little bit this summer, and I was killing some time talking to some airline workers.
Okay.
And I was talking about their job, and is it less stressful than it was 6 months ago, more stressful?
Yeah.
And they said, they're like, what we tend to do is if we look in, someone's got a wedding ring on their ring finger, we assume that they're tired, stressed, irritable.
Wow.
And they may be more difficult to work with than somebody who's not.
Interesting.
And they're like, okay, is that across the board? No, but that's our first assumption. Is this person is like sleep deprived, probably strapped for cash, probably missed opportunities. And so they're wearing stress. And so we just kind of arm ourselves for the interaction with that person over and against the person who doesn't. I'm like, that is a telling sign.
It is.
Is that gospel? No, it's not gospel. But anecdotally, they're like, yes, this seems to be affecting a lot of people. And so they can at least see from their point of view. So, I just think that we've got to find a way to help ourselves. And then once we feel like we're stable, help one another so that we can, have a better world society around us.
And that's like kind of heartbreaking to hear that, right?
Yes.
And again, what an opportunity for us. Like if we as Christians, as Jesus followers, can be the opposite of that, if a stewardess sees that we're married and we have crazy kids running around with us and we still have joy, what a testament of what our faith can be, right? So I think it's troubling news and it's frustrating and we're in a heavy season,
right? And
it's a great opportunity for us to show the world there's a different way to live. So on that note,
hard transition.
Yes. Come join us on Sunday. We'll talk about this some more. We'll figure all this out in the next however many weeks. We'll figure out how to be well rested and have a perfect work-life balance and find contentment in our lives. It's going to be great. So join us on Sunday. I'm sure it'll be a great week.
Yeah,
so
sounds good.
Thanks for your thoughts, Joe. It's very good. Yeah. Thanks again so much for you watching and listening. Go take a nap or hang out with a friend or do something fun that you need to do today.
Do something that doesn't have to be done, that brings delight to you.
Yes.
A bowl of ice cream. Eat it.
Oh, yeah. Every day. Thanks, everybody.
All right. See you next time.